Yo, what is going on today, YouTube? Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Today's video, we're talking about you guys and your ranked climbs. Trying to get you guys from that lowest rank or whatever rank you are right now, trying to get to that next one. I've got tips for every single rank to help you guys get up into the next tier. There's kind of tiers that happen in Smite. There's like that early beginning tier of bronze. Then you have the silver gold tier, plat diamond eventually, masters, and then finally GM. And I'm just going to kind of help you guys kind of realize where your mistakes are happening or what players in these ranks genuinely make, the mistakes that they genuinely make, and to kind of get to that next tier, because that's what the entire point of ranked is. You're trying to level up, trying to get to that unreachable GM status if you can. I have been playing Smite for now a long time. I have played in every single rank. I've never always been a Grandmaster's player. I was bronze at one point, silver, gold, all the way up. And so I kind of have a bunch of tips and a bunch of ideas in my head of different things to help you level up. Starting with bronze, this is just like that intro tier. Once you first download Smite, you get to level 30, you start hitting the queues, you're probably going to be a bronze player. It's okay, it happens, you have to start somewhere. Maybe you kind of start level 30, you continue hitting those casual queues, you don't really hit rank till 40, 45, and you skip bronze. That's fine. Go to the next tip page, but this is for bronze. For bronze, you just want to focus on the complete basics of Smite. What do each roles do? ADC, what do I do? I'm playing to be a damage dealer, a hard carry. I want to farm. Jungler, I want to gank and I want to get my team ahead. Support, I want to keep my team alive. Solo, I want to harass the enemy and 1v1 as many people as I can and kind of dive the enemy. There's different roles assigned. I was going to say, there's different roles assigned to each roles, but there's different ways to play the game, and how you want to be playing depends on the role that you've chose. Beyond that, you want to kind of focus on 2 to 3 gods in that specific role that you're focusing on. The best thing to do is choose that role that you like the most. Could be ADC, could be mid. Grab 2 to 3 gods. It does not matter at all how they play. Should you have, big AoE here, poke here? It does not matter. Just choose 2 to 3 gods and learn their basic abilities. And then start understanding to use relics. You want to put your relics on cooldown just to get used to using them. If you have beads, use your beads. If you have sprint, use your sprint. Stuff like that. Objectives. What is an objective? What do they do? I'm going to go to the objective. It's very easy to understand. Gold Fury. I can't do this until 15 minutes. It gives gold. Fire Giant. A lot of power. Can't do this until 25 minutes. And then just learning the really basics of farming. Oh, I want to go do the purple buff. Get some farm here. I want to go to my lane. Get some farm here. I need to do my speed buff. The mid camps are up. I should rotate to those. The very basics of the game should be learned in bronze. There's nothing that needs to be confusing about this. It's just focus on those things. Do not worry about builds. Just have auto builder on or buy the same build every time. Don't worry about that stuff. Should just be focusing on the very basics of Smite. Now, once you evolve from a bronze player to a silver gold player, the game starts to become a little bit more understood. No longer is it confusing with a lot of things. You're kind of having a good grasp of basic info. You know what your ADC is going to do. You know what you're going to do in mid. Now it's kind of starting to understand that more intermediate info. Start to understand builds. Yes, you can still use auto build. You can still have builds that you kind of plug in whenever. But you kind of have the idea of why you're buying this. Oh, this item, breastplate. I want that early cooldown and that physical protections to allow myself as Hercules to just cast more. Start to get why you're building something. You do not have to start focusing on builds for everything, but you should understand why you're grabbing them. Start to understand your role around objectives and your role around team fights. I'm a solo laner. What do I need to do in this fight? I need to dive the enemy. I'm a solo laner on this Gold Fury fight. What do I need to do? I actually need to tank this Gold Fury for my team. Our support's dead, so I'm the tank. Start to understand kind of the deeper stuff. You should start having a grasp of the basics of gods. You should know what Ao Kuang is going to do. Oh, his big thing is an execute, and then he's got a lot of abilities, or a lot of harass on his abilities because they're lower cooldowns. Playing against Thanatos, really good early game god, and has an execute. I have to be worried about him. Kali, bad early game, but if she goes late game, she's going to be insane. Stuff like that, you should know what the basics of the characters do. Start to realize what you're doing with farming. Oh, purple buff, 2 wave makes the most sense on this path. I should do purple and then wave. I shouldn't go to wave and then go back to purple because it doesn't make sense on my walk there. Wave is under tower, but my purple's up. I should go get that tower first, or the wave under tower first, so I don't miss as much farm, and then come back to my purple. Start to learn the role of gods at all points. What are you doing as an ADC at minute 10, or at minute 10 in this specific game, at minute 15 in this specific game? As a mid laner, level 10, do I want to rotate to that? Should I rotate to that? Yes, no. Once you start to understand this, it's very easy to understand that silver and gold is like, all you need to do is just start picking up the more detailed things. And don't get discouraged. Silver and gold is where the most players in Smite are. 50% of all players, actually, I think it's even more than that. It's probably like 80% of all players are in silver and gold. So don't get worried if you're stuck here. This is going to be a very long process getting out of silver and gold. Just start understanding that you should be improving every single day, and if you're doing that, you'll making it out of gold and silver in no time. Platinum Diamond. This is where the game starts to get a little bit more exciting, when people are kind of understanding at most points what they're going to be doing. They know the basics like the back of their hand. They're understanding their role. They can kind of start to build and build correctly. Why are they building this? You should have an idea of what you're building. Could you still use auto build? Yes, but auto build for the most part isn't going to be the best thing to be using in most games, so you should start to move away from auto build. In Platinum Diamond, though, you really start to see 3 different players. You have the shot callers and the thinkers, the one that are just, there should be someone around this wall, so I'm going to kind of set up a trap here. We should go for this gold fear. The mid laner just back. Stuff like that. These are the players that kind of win games through thinking. Usually this is the more support player play style, because you're going to be making shot calls, you're going to be helping your team, hitting the easier to hit abilities. The next player is that mechanical freak. These are the guys you're like, this guy's got to be smurfing because he's 18-1 in the jungle. Yes, these players are very good mechanically, but a lot of the times they're going 20-6, but they're losing games because they don't know how to close out the game. They don't know how to play around objectives. Their PvP is fantastic, but their PvE and their how to win games doesn't really make a ton of sense. And the last one is kind of like this weird mix of both, where they're pretty good players and they have a pretty good understanding, but they lack certain things in both departments that don't allow them to kind of push into that next tier. If you're in that first tier of like being a really good shot caller, being a really good thinker, you kind of want to step outside of that for a little bit. Play other roles, play mechanically reliant roles, play that mid laner, that jungler, that ADC. Start to kind of focus on your gameplay. Have your support call stuff, have your solo laner call stuff, have your duo buddy call stuff, and you should just be focusing on hitting your abilities and playing correctly in team fights. If you're more of that mechanical freak, you're really good PvP player, play some support games. Start to understand why you're doing something. If you're doing this as a jungler, a lot of times PvP players that are really good as jungler, or PvP mechanical freaks are really good as junglers, and they kind of make support's jobs hard because they are doing something that's really good for themselves, but that could be screwing over the game for your support. But once you start to play support, you start to pick some things up. You can kind of take that and be like, okay, this is what I've realized now from playing those support games. This is what I need to start applying in my own games. And if you're the weird mix of both, focus on either. Focus on those mechanics, 100% down to that. Play a bunch of jungle, play a bunch of mid. Only focus on hitting your abilities, positioning correctly, micro stuff. Or think first. Play some support games. Shot call objectives, call team fights, call to group up and stuff like that. But focus on either one. Don't kind of put all your eggs into all the baskets and try to learn all at the same time. It just makes it more difficult. Just focus on one and get one down pat. And once you kind of figure all that out, you'll kind of evolve into masters. And once you hit masters, the players will start to sweat. Games will get very difficult. You will have a harder time getting away with things in this rank than any rank above it by a wide margin. Players will start to freeze lanes, and it's going to be an actual good freeze instead of one that doesn't make sense. They will rotate out if they know that they have to make a play somewhere. They will bully out small advantages. They will punish your mistakes way more frequently. Yes, you might get punished in Platinum, Diamond, Silver, Gold, but consistent mistakes will get punished consistently in Masters. Consistent mistakes in those lower ranks will, for the most part, rarely get punished. So you need to start paying attention to the detail of fights, of 1v1s, of all of the game. You need to start understanding kind of advantages and disadvantages, understand God-specific matchups, and being able to pick a god dependent on the comp, depending on what the enemy has. Is it a good matchup for me? Is it a bad matchup for me? If I'm playing something like Daji, I don't really want to play that into Hell too much because of the cleanse. If I'm playing something like Hell, I don't want to play into something like Sobek because anti-heal the pluck to put me out of position. There's very specific matchups that are just difficult to play. And it could be something that you're finding a difficult time playing. That's fine. But you have to start understanding why it's a bad matchup, why it's a good matchup, and start kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. The hardest part about all of this is it's very hard to recognize these until you have a grasp of them. It's the idea of you really can't teach something until you've learned it completely. If you ask an algebra student to try to teach something on algebra that they haven't learned yet, or they haven't fully understood yet, it's going to be impossible for them to teach it. But once you start to grasp something, it becomes a lot easier to teach. And that's kind of like the understanding if you really do get something. Can you teach to someone else? You're 1v1 against this character. You understand it now. 50%. Can you teach it to someone else? No. At 100%, you can start to teach somebody else why this matchup is bad. Herc passive, it makes it very hard to fight into. Extra power, his trading pattern just makes it so you can't really avoid it. If you're playing something like Wukong, you have to kind of avoid him, clear. If you do clear, maybe you can look to fight him, but that's the idea of when you fully understand it, you should be able to teach it to somebody else. But the hardest part is, it is very hard to pick up on these small details of why is this thing so bad? Why is this so good? A pretty easy way is to kind of have somebody else watch your gameplay or watch your own gameplay and kind of pick up on, wow, I got smacked here. Why? Wow, I smacked this guy here. Why? It is always good to have an extra eye on stuff like this because this is like the point where, as I said, it's very hard to understand why something is happening a lot. But once you do start to get it, it becomes a whole new world. Finally, you've reached GM, and since there's only 50 players in GM, I wanted to kind of put it as like high masters and like GM because 50 players, it's very hard to get to GM, but you should want to reach as high as you can. Obviously, some players are going to be all right with Master. Some are going to be all right with Diamond. Some are going to be all right with Platinum. If you want to try to get to that GM rank, if you want to peak at that level, you have to start to make every game matter. After every game, think of 2 to 3 games or 2 to 3 things that you did wrong in that match. And then in that next match, apply those as hard as you can. Was your map awareness bad? Was your team fight poor? Was your objective play bad? Were you too focused on 1v1ing this solo lane matchup and you didn't rotate to help your team enough? You should be focused on those things and apply those things heavily in your next match. The best advice that I heard for trying to become a better player is to be humble and always stay curious. You are never going to be the best player in the room. If you think like that, if you think that there's always going to be something that you can learn from something else, you will always be able to become a better player. Always stay curious about why did this guy do this, especially if you're in like that Masters GM rank and you got destroyed by a guy that you thought was going to be like an easy matchup. Why did he do this? Why was this good for him? I am not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. I might be a really good player, but I need to look kind of at myself and be like, this is something I did wrong. He did right, even though it was weird. And I think that's something that's very hard because it is not easy to see somebody do something dumb or as you think is dumb, get destroyed by it, and then be like, wow, well, why did that work? It's mostly going to be like, this guy sucks. He got lucky. It's because of this happened. No, that's not always the case. Sometimes, yeah, it might be the case. And you have to be able to apply that and be like, okay, it wasn't something that I did. It was something that happened in this game specifically. But if you can stay curious, your brain will be like a sponge. You'll be soaking things up and you'll be able to reach GM and even climb into that top 10. But yeah, that's tips for every rank, kind of get to that next level. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys again next time. Peace.